and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., please give it up for the fantastic Hayley Atwell!
I just want you here, like it was 1941. Play that silky tune.
Wow, hello. Wow, what an amazing crowd. Can't really see anyone. It's like an ocean of heads. Hi. How is everybody? Yeah, such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming and joining us here in London this weekend. And how does it feel to come out to a room full of people cheering just to see you on a Sunday afternoon?
It's exhausting. It just makes me feel so vulnerable. It's wonderful, especially an event like this, because you're coming to an audience that loves this kind of work.
Yeah.
So it feels it's always a very warm reception, and I'm very happy to talk about Peggy Carter because it's such a positive experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, always a delight to be here.
And you were talking about your work and things like that, but what made you really want to get into being an actress? What made you want to start off?
Theatre. So I'm a classically trained actor. I went to drama school. I did my degree in theatre, and when I was a kid, my mum used to always take me, and I thought there was something magical about a room full of people who didn't know each other, all going on an imaginative journey in the same room with the lights going down and having this cathartic experience with strangers on a stage that had the power to entertain, to move, to provoke, to excite. And I thought, this is what I want to do with my life. This is worth kind of dedicating my time to. And I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to learn how to be good at this because I respect it as a craft, and I expect audiences enough to want to kind of prepare and study and be a part of this world. And I would see other actresses like Judi Dench and Helen Mirren and Fiona Shaw and Juliet Stevenson, and I mean the list goes on of women who seem to be, as actors on the stage, having a presence and having intelligence and having warmth and had the ability to say things that I couldn't even fathom saying. And that was it, really. So, you know, comic books are a part of that journey. They're part of my story. But it's a particular genre within a whole kind of umbrella of all the kind of work that I do. And
you mentioned the magical bit there of a group of people getting together and not knowing each other and experiencing something. And could you kind of say that's the same about when you're working on a TV and a film? Because at the beginning, you don't know any of these people, and then all of a sudden, you're working together and you're creating something magical.
Yeah, it's yeah, I think with theatre, it's very much a stage, and you have a minimal set compared to a TV and film, which spends a lot of its time making sure that it looks incredibly believable. It's a visual medium, whereas theatre tends to be an audio medium. The idea with theatre is that if you closed your eyes, you could still follow the story with what you could hear. And within film and TV, the idea is if you blocked your ears and couldn't hear anything, visually you could still follow the story. So that's kind of the main difference between them both. But I think there is little time to rehearse when you're doing film and theatre, so it's very much about your instincts, when your first impressions of reading a script, or your first impressions of meeting the director or the fellow actors. They are what's going to dictate the tone of the whole piece. So it's very much kind of an immediate feeling that you get from a project, and you go, well, how do we then keep that going when you're working sometimes 15-hour days, and sometimes night shoots, and it takes over your life. So it better be worthwhile. It better be a story that you want to tell, because it really is, you know, it's a lifestyle. It's not just a 9-to-5 job.
Indeed. And you mentioned first impressions there. What were your first impressions when you read the role of Agent Peggy Carter?
So I approached it the same as I would any job, which is to prepare, to go in knowing what I would be asked to do. And I hadn't heard of Captain America, the comic book, that world. The genre of sci-fi and comics weren't part of my upbringing. But in a way that was a massive advantage, because it meant that I hadn't put pressure on myself to live up to something. So there was a freedom in that. And so I remember I was telling my friend, I'm auditioning for Captain America, and they're like, oh, that's amazing. I was like, don't tell me anything, because I'm going to be really nervous if I know any more. So I just did it. And the final full day audition was learning, I think it was an 8-page scene, one of the scenes being her final moment on the phone with Steve, and then having about half an hour to learn an unarmed combat routine, and then seeing how confident I was with loading and unloading guns. And that was it. And I was so nervous the whole time. It was like a bit of an out-of-body experience. And I came away thinking, well, I did the best that I could do. And so even if it's not mine, then it was never meant to be, because I really gave my all. And then, for a few weeks later to get the call saying, I think my agent said, "Hi, is that Peggy Carter?" I was like, "I don't know, is it?" She's like, "It's your," yeah, he was like, "The train stopped at your station. It's your train, you're Peggy."
Wow.
And it was really wonderful, but I could never fathom that here we are, 7-8 years later.
Yeah.
You just, you show up and you do the best you can, given what is directly in front of you. And then, remarkably, some things have a life and a world of their own that take you in other directions. And here I am now, in front of you guys.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, when did you become aware of the kind of popularity of Peggy Carter as a character and your portrayal of her?
I think it was probably when Louis D'Esposito, who's the vice president of Marvel, asked me if I'd like to do the one-shot to put onto the the extras for the Blu-ray release of Iron Man 3, I believe. Yeah. And so we shot this, 14-minute short film, and we took it to Comic-Con in San Diego, and it was for the fans, and the fans were in the audience, and they watched it, and their response, it was just so welcoming. And I kind of came on stage and got a sense of they wanted this to happen, which was very humbling, really, because you, as an actor, you never know what's going to stick with people. You'll never know what's going to resonate with one person over the other. So to have kind of this just mass amount of people all going, "We want to see more of her," was the first experience I had that she'd made an impact, really. And I think it was from the feedback that we'd gotten from the one shot that Louis asked me if we wanted to do this as a show. And of course, I was like, "I just check my watch and my schedule and I'll get back to you." It's like, yes, of course I do. So then we went on to make the show.
And can you remember what it was like when you first walked onto the set of Peggy Carter? What were your first impressions?
The first well, it was the Disney lot in Hollywood.
Wow.
And I drove myself to work. The blue skies and palm trees kind of above me, and had my little coffee and radio on, and I was nervous, but there was also this feeling of everything feeling like it had just fit into place. There's the excitement of, I'd never known as an actor whether or not Hollywood would be something that would open its doors to me, or in fact it's something I wanted to pursue because it's such a different world to the world I'd come from in theatre. So it was really exciting. And then getting on set, and James Darcy, who plays Jarvis, going, "Hello! Oh, let's just have a really fun time. Whatever's going to happen, let's just have a great time. Let's create some great memories." And we were both, kind of, it was contagious, the excitement we both had with it. And, I'd known James, I think we did Mansfield Park together in, I think, like 2006 or 7.
Wow.
So I'd known him a long time. So seeing his lovely face and his smiling, warm, open arms was a great way to begin a show.
And it must have been about almost feeling like coming home in a sense, because you've got this familiar face there with you and someone you can
Yeah, but also it was kind of coming home, because Marvel had been so wonderful and kind and lovely that you saw familiar faces, and that's always makes something a lot easier, because otherwise you're not only you kind of leading a show which is new, but you're having to break the ice with a lot of people who you're going to be working with every day. And that's, it's like first day at school. It's like, how am I going to make friends, and how am I going to get through this without being so nervous that I kind of bolt for the door? And so to have had the experience with the films, with Marvel, it felt that they kind of rallied around us to make sure that we felt safe, that we felt that we were in good hands, knowing that they had good intentions with the show, and they were going to do whatever they could to make it a success.
And it was. People loved it, and it's become somewhat of a cult classic now, considered by many people to be. And when did you realise that popularity of the show had achieved?
The conventions, I suppose. I never read reviews for anything that I do, because it's kind of useless. My mum once said kind of a goal in life would be to be independent of the good and bad opinions of other people. Wow. Which kind of reminds me a little bit about what Peggy says when she says, "I know my value, anyone else's opinion doesn't really matter." I think my mum was essentially saying the same thing, that if if the reviews are good, then you're high as a kite for a day. If they're bad, you're, depths of despair. And to be independent of both of them, I think it's in the Rudyard Kipling poem If, the poem of like, if you do all these things, you will become a man or a woman, which is one of the lines is about if you can accept success and disaster as in both as imposters, then you be a man or then you be a woman. And I think that put me in good stead. So with something like Peggy Carter, you're doing it for the audience and you bring as much generosity and craftsmanship as you can to it, but then you let it go and you let it have its own world. And so the feeling of connection I had with the audience came from coming to conventions and talking to people and people saying, this is my child, I've named her Carter, or people with tattoos, people dressed up as Peggy, but also people going, that tagline, I know my value, is something that they've taken with them. It's really humbling, and you think that's a conversation I feel very privileged to be part of, because you never know as an actor going into this what's going to happen. You navigate your way through. Someone said the misconception of success, especially within the arts, because success in the arts is not linear. It's not like, if I do this job for the next 20 years, I'm likely to get promoted to this.
Yeah.
You never know within the arts what's going to happen. So it's kind of like this messy, sometimes there's a bit of a success, bit of a failure, bit of kind of plateau, then big success, and then nothing for a bit. So you kind of have to let go of the whole thing, really. And so what I prefer is just the one-on-one contact with fans who have, in some way, really resonated with what Peggy stands for, and both men and women who have been able to feel empowered by the circumstances that Peggy's in, and she deals it with such grace and dignity and strength that I think it feels very, I feel very honoured to be a custodian of that.
And aside from the grace and the dignity, she has a lot of action in the series. She's very kick-ass, and what's your favourite action scene to do? What was the one that you liked? Wow.
I loved, there's a diner fight sequence in the first season, I think it's episode 5, and Jarvis gets to hit someone over the head with a tray and be very proud of himself. And it was great to do, because I loved that set and the music they put on behind it. They just had this, I think it captured the spirit of the whole show, which was to have a tongue-in-cheek quality to it that was light-hearted and entertaining and sassy and fun. And so I love the choreography of that. And I think by then I'd had a bit of practice, because I have a video of me practicing the first fight scene with green suit, and I can see him through the mirror looking at me from the wardrobe, and I do a back kick, and when we rehearsed it, I kicked him right in the balls. Oh! And I have it on my phone, because the stunt and the fight choreographer recorded it. She wanted to record me fighting so she could see so I could see where I needed more work, and what I needed to do better next time. And so I have it on video. And the best thing about it is she'd shot it in slow motion. So what happens is I do it, and then you see him falling onto the ground, and me going, no! I feel a bit bad. I wouldn't want to post that for that young man. But she was like, I think you can do better. So there were a few reproductive organs damaged in the making of season 1. So by season 2, I'd gotten a little bit more skilled at it.
And you also got the chance to sing in season 2. When you first found out about that, how did you kind of react?
Well, we thought, because I don't know if you followed my Twitter account at the time, which I don't have anymore, but I have an Instagram account, but you'll get a sense of the pranks that the writers' room and the showrunners would do on each other. So you could never go into the writers' room kind of relaxed. It was a trap. And so every doorway, you're like, is there sellotape across here? Am I gonna, every time you go around a corridor, you're like, or coming out of the bathroom, you're like, someone's gonna be out there to jump out at you. And I've posted them recently of Eric Pearson, who was one of the lead writers on Agent Carter and actually wrote the recent Thor, who's done, his career's just taken off. He's so talented and funny. He was one of the kind of main culprits of the pranks. So, it was just very hard to kind of take anything seriously. So when they said, we're doing like this dream sequence number, and you're all just dancing, and I'm like, well, whatever. And they said to Enver, who played Agent Sousa, they said, we're going to have you in a sweater vest, dancing with your little, it's going to be like more of a cane now. And he, by this point, was like, I am so sick and tired of you playing pranks on me, guys, and me being gullible, that I'm just not going to believe it. And so it wasn't until the day that we did it, we thought, this is actually happening. And it was so charming. We went to Radio City, is that what it's called? Yeah. There's the big kind of sound studio in LA where you'd see like Adele on the wall and like all these incredible legends, and just us in our sound booths being like, just trying to sound like rock stars for the day. And it was wonderful. It was very charming.
And you mentioned them playing pranks on you. Did you play pranks on them?
Oh yeah. Well, you've probably seen the ones. So James Darcy managed to get the art department to print out every single available photograph of himself on the internet, print them out, and then post them all over the walls of my trailer, and even in the toilet. I lifted up the lid, and there's his face going. I just every cupboard I opened, I was like, "Oh, James, go away!" But yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think what we did to get him back. Oh, well, of course, the big one, which some of you might know, was Dominic Cooper's face. He's a very, thing about Dom is he's so cool, and he's funny, and he's just, got the gift of the gab, and he's so good with the ladies. Be careful. That there was a picture of us that was taken upside down. We had fallen on the floor after a take, and we were just laughing, and someone took it. So it's him upside down, so all of his face is kind of sagging in the opposite up direction. And he looks, it's like one of the worst photographs of him ever taken, and I'm delighted about it, because he's normally so cool. And so he looked at it and he went, you need to delete that immediately. And I said, yes, I will, before I send it to James Darcy first thing. So I sent it to James, and I went, have this printed as soon as possible. And I went, look, delete, see? You're fine, you're safe with me, Dom. And then the next day, James had gotten, again, the very faithful art department to print it on about 200 shirts. So the entire crew was wearing the shirt of Dominic's face on his last day of shooting. And wow. We took pictures of it. And then what was great about it is now this T-shirt is traveled. We've had the T-shirt on someone in the Bahamas, in Fiji, on strangers, on comedian Joe Lycett, who's a friend of mine. I got him to wear it.
Oh, wow.
We then, Enver for Christmas gave me a bobblehead of that, not just of Dominic, of that particular picture made for me.
That's
it's
awesome.
A phone case. And then also, James sometimes calls me up. He goes, apparently for £4,000 you can get it put on a massive poster in the billboard on the A3. And I'm like, and he goes, for an hour. I'm like, that sounds reasonable, Like, how can we raise the money? Maybe we should do a startup fundraiser for that. With that, and we also have a WhatsApp group, which is all the writers and the actors of Agent Carter, and we send each other little messages, and it was that kind of humor is what kept the energy up and kept the work being at the level that it was at, because everyone was in such high spirits all the time and laughing all the time, that it inspired more creativity. So we just kind of keep that going. Yeah. So who knows where it's going to end up now? It'd be amazing if it turned up there now.
I think we have internet, I'm hoping. Mark is now looking. But if he is, you never know what may happen. I'm just warning you. But for you, Peggy Carter has had such an incredible impact on both young women and both young men. Now, when did you ever think that this would happen? When did you realize it, and how does it actually make you feel?
Well, honestly speaking, my ambitions as an actor were to be really good at telling lots of different kinds of stories. And I think one of the good thing about British actors is that we're not scared to be at times bad or to look unattractive.
Right.
And so I like I like to, and I hope to pursue a kind of a wide range of characters. I think that as an actor it gives you more longevity if you're willing not to look sexy and glamorous, because what happens when you wake up in the morning and you don't want to be that and you're not that anymore anyway.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of I'm having to take a step back and look at her in her world and for what she is, and think, that's going to be, a really, that's going to be a significant character in my career. Partly because of the impact that it's had on young girls and young guys of knowing what's appropriate behavior towards a woman in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I think, in light of, I'm sure lots of people are aware of what's been happening in Hollywood now, this kind of incredible expose about harassment and sexual harassment and the normalizing of talking and treating women in a particular way, and women allowing themselves to be treated in that way because they're scared of losing their job, or they start to believe that about themselves anyway. And so to have had the opportunity to play a part of a woman who is successful, intelligent in her own right, is not blind to what's going on, but also does not debase herself in dealing with it, and is not rude and crass, is not aggressive. It does not try and find a way to fight that that's against her own values. She uses her wit. She uses her warmth. She's quietly stoic, and eventually, if that means that she doesn't get kind of the credit she supposedly deserves, it means her moral compass remains intact. And I find that particularly now very resonant, and what I as a person find inspiring about her. So I've taken certain traits. I mean, I found myself in situations of going, what would she do in this? She would probably just smile and then walk away, or she would have, a very polite, witty, but an undercut, kind of a badass line that would floor that person. But what she has the ability to do, I think, sometimes is to appeal to the better in that person, or the highest in them, by never going down to their level. And I think that's a really, really good quality, and I think it's something that I've learned from as well, of going in moments of doubt where you feel bullied or harassed, or you feel undermined in some way as a woman, but also from anyone that's in a position of power over you, is what's the classiest way to handle this, where I can come away feeling that my soul is intact and that I would be proud of myself, and the people who know me would be proud of the way I reacted to that in that moment. And that's kind of put me in good stead. It's rare to come across a character that has the opportunity to explore that as their main characteristic. So I'm very happy to be part of that.
That's a perfect answer, I think, and it's almost like you're thinking, what would Peggy do? So it's WWPD. That's a way of kind of
like
putting
Wrestling Federation.
Yeah. But we mentioned there the people that you've influenced, so it's a perfect time, I think, to open up the floor for questions. So we have two mics that are flashing, and we're going to start off with the gentleman there who just flew to the mic almost.
Hi, my question is, when you did Captain America, what was it like working with Chris, and what was your favourite scene working with him?
He introduced me to running charades, which is a great game. I don't know if you guys know it. So you have two teams, and you have one person in the middle who's like the games master, and I'd have like a list of 10 films, and one member of each team runs to me as a race as quickly as they can, and I whisper the name of that film to them, and they run back to their team, and they have to quite quietly act out what that film is before the other team does. And whoever in their team figure out what the title is, they run back to me and get the second title, and it's like a race. And it sounds simple. It is one of the funnest things to do at a party. So he's great at that. He's a great person for organized fun, Chris. He became like my brother. He's very playful. He's very warm. He's hardworking on set, but knows how to have a good time as well. And I'm trying to think what he liked. I think it was when I was creeping him out as older Peggy in the bed. Because we had a day, and I'd had the makeup on and the hair on, and I was in the bed, and there was lots of time kind of waiting around, and it was it's an emotional scene, and he's really getting into it, and I'm getting into it, and I think they did it so beautifully in the script. It kind of made sense, kind of heartbreaking. He finds her, but it's too late, and she's had her life, and she's at the end of it. And but I kept on kind of in between takes going, "Oh, hello, young man," like. and just like opening up the bed sheet, going, "Come in." And he was like, "This is so gross. I'm sorry. This is so weird." But then also kind of laughing at it and enjoying it. So I fully took advantage of that position. But we can, that's kind of that's another thing which is rare in this industry, is to work with the same people for a long period of time, because you really get to know them, and you see them change and develop. And I saw Chris, starting off going, I don't know if this might flop, it might not do well, I don't know, and working so hard, doing the best he could, and then seeing how it all's taken off, and how over the films he's matured as an actor, as Cap has matured, and he's coming into his own, and that's really nice to witness, and that's rare, because you can work very intensely with other actors for a short period of time and feel like family by the end of it, but then your life takes you in different directions, you never see each other again, or you're like ships in the night. So it's lovely. I'm always happy to see him, and for the other people in the Marvel family.
And I think your chemistry with Chris is way better than Robert and Gwyneth in Iron Man, because it's funnier.
Thank you very much.
And we go to the lady over here.
I wanted to ask, in Agent Carter, you get to wear a lot of very beautiful costumes, some of which have become iconic. You can see them around the con at the moment. What were they like to wear, and did they make any effort to make it comfy for you?
I made every effort to make myself comfortable. I've told the story before, so sorry if I'm repeating myself. I had to get my driving license in America renewed, so I went to the DMV as Peggy in my lunch break. But I had a harness on underneath my outfit, because we were doing a fight sequence that evening. So I had my wig on. It was like it's in, I think, the first season where she wears wide leg trousers and like a little jacket, and I've got the harness on underneath. And I mean, by that point, I was, you just kind of get on with it. You get used to it, really. The wig's kind of, it gets itchy, and it's kind of, but it always looks immaculate. So there's, like us girls, we suffer in heels, but we also feel confident wearing them sometimes, and attractive. So that makes it kind of the pain sometimes worth it. But yeah, so I think they also they were good at making the clothes for me. So they made the clothes to make sure that they fitted me exactly, that they were beautiful material. They sourced a lot of wonderful material and things from Paris that they brought over. We had an amazing costume designer whose attention to detail was great, but also we had a bit of room to play with and cheat a little bit, because this is obviously doesn't have to be historically accurate because of the genre of Marvel. So we were able to take liberties a little bit there. And it was, she is such an elegant time. It helps a lot with how she stands and holds herself, that she's in beautiful tea dresses like that. And I think I'm very feminine and very soft, and also kind of complements the fact that she's very strong and can be very powerful, but yet physically she can also be incredibly feminine. So it was a nice combination to use in the clothes. Thank you.
For your time as an actor, has there ever been a stunt that you've had to do that's left you either a bit scared or feeling like a badass?
They always make me feel badass. I love it. I do. I love them. We're doing Christoper Robin at the moment, and with Ewan McGregor, and I'm having to do stunt driving around London. And the stunt guys are like, the first time I did it, I got in the car, and they're like, just start off slow to get used to it. Don't you worry. You're going to be safe. And if you're worried, you just put your foot on the little brake and you'll be fine. And I'm like, thank you. Go away. And I just went full force. And it was great because Ewan was beside me going, yes, you're amazing. And I'm like, I know. And then on action. And also, here's the thing, is that I was like, I was like, I'm catching you out because you have this like slightly condescending tone, as if you assume I'm not going to be good at this. Fine, it's past experience with other people has told you that. That ain't me. And I was able to do it, and I can be I'm very confident. I did rugby at school when I was 16, so I'm quite, physically quite confident and strong in that department. I'm used to kind of large women running at me and just kind of taking it and standing up and brushing myself off and going for it again. But the stunt guys were really kind of surprised and slightly scared. I was like, don't worry, I can see all those extras and I can see where those cars are, so I'm going to go and swerve really quickly, and I guarantee I'm not going to put anyone in danger. And that's because that's what I'd learned from Agent Carter. You have brilliant teams within Marvel who are, they're professional stuntmen and women who not only do the very difficult things that you physically cannot do, but they help you learn how to convincingly throw a punch safely. So a lot of it is kind of teaching us how to do it like a dance choreography. And once you learn the routine of it, and then you get more confident with it, then you can start playing with it a little bit more and making it your own. So there was one other thing though I remember in the second season, I believe. It's in the back of an Italian restaurant, and there's a conversation going on, and through a glass pane, you can see Sousa and Peggy fighting some baddies. Well, there's a stunt where I think the stunt woman and the stunt man playing Peggy and Sousa took over and did it. But they kind of fly out of the shot, and then we fly back in. And so they would fly out, and then dressed as our characters, and we would fly in as if we'd just been that person that did the backflip or whatever. So Enver and I had to fly in and be like, I'm exhausted. And we just sat there the whole time just waiting for that moment to go in and do it. And so every time Enver and I see each other, we're like, how you doing? I'm sorry. And it's so cleverly done, like the trick of the eye to make it look just seamless, and that we're just badass at everything. But it's great, all these people just make us look good, and we're just sitting there looking like we're about to hyperventilate. But yeah, I love it. I think it's one of the reasons why I got the part, is that I'm not afraid of it.
And you mentioned working on the new movie there. What can you tell us about your role as Evelyn in that?
So it's called Christoper Robin, and Ewan McGregor plays Christoper Robin, who's grown up, and he's a workaholic, and he's married to me, and we have a child, and we notice that he is not very happy in his life. And so the story really is how Winnie the Pooh comes back into his life and teaches him all the things that Christoper Robin knew as a boy, but as an adult had lost his way. It's beautiful, and it's a fantastic director called Mark Forster, who's done a lot of really varied films. And I just wrapped on that, and it was, of course, I'd worked with you on a Woody Allen film 12 years ago, so we knew each other from then. And it's just it's going to be a beautiful film. It'll come out August 4th, I believe, next year.
Wow. Well, we look forward to seeing that. And we're going to move on to this gentleman here.
Hi, Hayley.
Hi.
Hi, you all right? So next year, Marvel starts shooting Captain Marvel. And it's supposed to be set in the early 1990s. So does that mean we're going to see the return of Peggy Carter? Please say yes.
God, well, you'll have to ask Marvel. They won't give me any information. You might be better at it.
Are you going to be in it, though?
Am I going to be in it?
Yeah.
It's the first time I've heard of it. I didn't even know they were making it. I'm sorry, I'm terrible. I don't know anything. Someone came up to me recently in America when I was promoting Howard's End, which is something that's coming out in November on BBC One Sunday nights. Everyone should watch it. It's great. But I was chatting to someone, and she was like, so, the Infinity War? And I was like, remind me again, what was that, like after Second World War? When's that? And she's like, well, and then she's like, the jewels? And I was like, these? Do you like and she was like, oh, you really don't know anything. And I'm like, no. I mean, they keep it so secret, and understandably so, because they want to build up the suspense, but also they want to get it right and to delight you guys. So they don't even tell us, and they probably knew I'd be a big mouth and be like, I'm not saying anything, but yeah, I'm totally going to be in every movie that Marvel makes from now on. But they would probably know I'm likely to share that. But so I really don't. I would happily, turn up again as Peggy in whatever form she takes. The good thing is that we know that she's 96 when she passes away. So I was like, guys, technically I could be employed for the rest of my life. And I'd be really happy with that.
See, Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, is a really good, strong female character. And I envisaged if it was set in the early 1990s, then having Peggy Carter as a mentor would make a great feature in the movie. Please call Kevin Feige and say you need a job.
I'm going to call Kevin Feige right now.
Well done.
And pitch it. Thank you.
I'm going to move on to this lady here.
Hi, I just want to say you're quite amazing and inspiring to me.
Oh, thank you.
Just being able to see a strong female character is so important. And I have a couple of questions for you. First, who is your favorite female Marvel character aside from the role you play, Peggy Carter?
God, I don't know. Did you hear my answer to my last question?
Fair enough.
Okay, what's your second question?
I once had dinner with Scarlett Johansson. I thought she was very lovely. So I'm going to say her.
Question answered.
Yeah.
And the second one is, do you wish there were more badass female role models when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about who I had in the comic book and cartoon kind of world. So I guess She-Ra.
Nice.
And, I mean, I always felt, I don't know about you guys, but I felt quite genderless when I was growing up. You don't kind of, your sense of gender identity and your gender-specific sexuality comes out in kind of more kind of puberty years. And so when I was a kid, I look up to heroes as heroes and didn't really differentiate between if they were male or female. And I think also, you know, you can stay. And I think that's still is the case. You know, a quality in a man or a woman that is heroic is that quality. It shouldn't be to do with gender. And I feel it's it's part of a conversation. You know, every convention I go to, it's questions like this. And I'm aware that it's a part of kind of our social conscience of women and men wanting more and better representation of real women. And that means that it's not just looking a particular way to fit a particular demographic or to be a particular age or race or sexuality, but to be very human and to have human characteristics that are universal, that deal with love, that deal with fear, that deal with pain and anger, but also that deal with adventure and fantasy and creativity and all the things that we innately have as human beings and the ability that we have to create those worlds within our imagination. And I think people are responding to that. You have, as I've just discovered, a Captain Marvel film coming out next year. And I've just done Howard's End, which is another female-led narrative of a woman and her relationship with her sister. And it's a female relationship where the two women are not pitted against each other. And their relationship does not revolve around getting the boy. It's funny, it's playful, it's warm, it's hypocritical, it's contradictory, it's contrary, it's bickering, it's jealousy, it's all the things that are natural and real. And I think the more the audiences go, yeah, we want to see more of that. We want to see characters that we relate to. Then there's going to be an audience for it, and Hollywood and other franchises and film companies will respond to that. But it's the relationship that the film has with its audience. You guys have power as well. It's not just the film company going, look what we've done, and you just having to take it. You choose what you like, and the more you go and see what you love, it creates enough heat around it for film companies to go, well, apparently the audiences want strong female women. We've got plenty of those, so let's bring them to the forefront of it. And I hope to be part of that. But it's very important that young men as well see women and how different we all are, and the gifts that we have to offer that are beyond a particular body type or a set of qualities that are this is shallow and superficial and short-lived. That young boys kind of seem to grow up to respect women the way that they did their own mothers, and I feel like it is changing. The conversation is getting more honest and more real about it. So, long may that continue.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi.
The Dove Smash Wars that you did with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. cast, whose idea was it to kind of turn it into a competition to raise money for the charities?
So it was San Diego Comic-Con 2015, and James and I were about to start filming the second season, and I had discovered Dub Smash from Alana Masterson, who is on The Walking Dead. So bad. I'm a nerd. I read books all day and play with my dog. That's all I do. But she was like, this is a cool thing, you might be into it. And I was hooked immediately. And so I showed it to James, and we started just messing around and doing it backstage at Comic-Con. And then Chloe Bennett and Clark Gregg were like, what are you doing? That looks really fun. And I was like, it is. We're really good at it. And then, so we were showing them, and then they sent one of them, of Chloe and Clark doing it. And then we kind of got a bit naturally competitive with each other. And then I think then James and I discovered that Chloe had once been a pop singer in China. And we found the video, recorded it, uploaded it onto Dubsmash. And in the video, she wears this like really cool gold headband. So we put our lanyards on our foreheads, and we were like doing the Dubsmash, and she was mortified. So then you could see kind of Clark the rest of the afternoon doing interviews and signing autographs, but you could see the wheels turning in his brain. He's like, how am I going to get them back? And I went to bed early that night, and I got a text from James, who was at this after party with them, and it was just, oh my God, it's really good. And I'm devastated, and you'll be beside yourself. And suddenly the video comes in of them singing Queen's We Are the Champions. And then it ends with Clark Gregg jumping up dressed as Peggy. And I was so angry. I was like sat in bed going, how do I come back from this? And the next morning, I saw James, and we were like, what do we do? And he goes, I think the only we can do, we've got to get Captain America involved. I'm like, right, calling Chris right now. And we managed to get a flight. We got back to LA from Comic-Con, San Diego. The next day, we wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. James picks me up in the car going, we are nuts. I was like, I know, but it's worth it. And we got on a flight to Atlanta for a 9-second Dubsmash of Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. And we had his shield in front of us. I mean, we practiced that. Chris was like, I don't like the lighting. I think we need to do it over here. We need to make sure the backdrop's better. Let's go over here. And we really committed, as you can tell. Then we got back on a plane and came back to LA. And so it was from the base of that, actually, that Clark then came to me and said, people are really liking this, and it's so fun. We love doing it. Could we use it as an opportunity to raise money for charity? And so James and I jumped at the chance, and we got people involved in creating this kind of website whereby we'll do 3 rounds of videos, and you get to vote. And every time you vote, you donate a little bit of money to a charity of our choice. And whoever wins the ultimate, all that money goes to that particular charity. And also, someone gets the opportunity to visit all the actors and have tea with them. So it turned out to be great. We got Stan Lee involved. We went to his house on the weekend, and we managed to get Louis D'Esposito, managed to get Clark Gregg's car Lola, and got it off the set, unbeknownst to Greg, and park it outside of Stan Lee's car. And Stan is sitting in the passenger seat. I'm dressed as Rosie with her, powerful, and a headscarf and all that. And we're singing Lola from the Kinks with Stan Lee just sat there, and James sponging down the back of the car in a blonde wig and some high heels. And it was such a joy to do. And we just spent in between takes, we were sitting on set going, okay, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? Can you get Miss Peggy on the phone? Can you? And we did. She dressed up as Peggy Carter and did one with us. And we did Single Ladies together. But you can kind of idea of the frisson and the excitement that it was to be part of that. But also know it was for a good cause, made us all up our game a lot more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Did you prefer doing the TV show or the films?
I think by the time I'd done the TV show, I felt more we knew who Peggy was a lot more. And in the film, there was a lot of waiting around. I was on set every day, but not necessarily needed. So I was doing an open university course in my trailer. I was learning about art history and the struggle for democracy in Burma in between takes. Because I had this time, but with Agent Carter, my first pickup, the first day, my wake-up time was 3:30 a.m. and it was full on day in, day out, and I really knew that I was having to be in every scene. So the amount of time was quite challenging physically, but by that point, we knew each other, so we had a lot more fun, and we could prank each other a lot more, and I think enjoy it. So I think it's kind of was a natural progression from the film.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We've got time for a couple of more questions, so we'll start with this gentleman.
Hi, you said earlier on before we do the questions about the fun times you had on set, where you said about the last scene you did with Peggy Carter as old Peg, because that was quite an emotional scene really, and then when you did the first Avenger with the radio call, how did you mentally prepare for something like that? Because that scene in the bedroom was such a touching scene and such a well scene to do. How did you feel going into it and at the end? And plus, that was one of your last real scenes really in the Avengers movies and Captain America movies.
It's called acting.
Yeah. But how did you feel? How did you feel when you were doing that scene?
Well, we talked about it with the Russo brothers, who felt that it would be bittersweet if you get a sense that she's maybe on set of Alzheimer's, and I remember my grandmother passed away. She had Alzheimer's and dementia, and she'd passed away a few years before we shot that scene, and I remembered kind of observing that she'd have moments of lucidity and then moments of forgetting what had just happened, her memories going and then coming back, and she'd remember things from a long time ago, and then she would struggle with the present moment. And within that struggle was a frustration and an upset, and like the hardest to watch the stages of her disease was knowing that she was frustrated when she realized what she had. Like that was that was hardest to watch, and hardest I think for her when she remembered that she was ill and she had this disease. And when it was very far advanced, she was not having those moments of realization. So in fact, it was, I think, slightly easier for her to live with. So I think from observing her, I think we wanted to make sure that Peggy at that stage had a strong kind of that strong heartfelt connection with this man who had been, by the end of her life, her soulmate, but also then forgetting that she'd seen him since, and I thought it was a beautifully way to do it, where you see her kind of, you get a glimpse of what it would have been like for her to discover him for the first time he did come and visit her, you just use your imagination beyond that and listen to hopefully what is good direction, and they would, and also you do many, many different versions of it. So we did a version where she became more upset. We did one where she was wiser and all-knowing and kind of Yoda-like and was not in any way flustered by it. And then in turn, Chris had different levels of reaction as well. And that's really fun as an actor, because it means that you're coming up with lots of alternative ways to play the scene, and then in the edit, once they put it in the context of the rest of the film, they're going to figure out what they feel is going to be most affecting. So it's very much a collaboration, but then you kind of make it up as you go along.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have time for one final question from this person here.
Hi.
I was such a big fan of your series Conviction and the amazing Hayes Morrison that you played. Is there a chance that we'll see a second season?
No. No.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we have. Please join me in giving a massive round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Hayley Atwell.
Thank you.